If everything can be paused, I will ask the spiritual court to put death on hold, so we can have time to breathe, and the rain of tears shall stop.
I have an appeal to the Supreme Court of Justice and Truth. Your mediation is necessary. Pause everything for a moment.
Government will accordingly take action to address the expectations of our people in dealing with the challenge of the violations of our immigration laws. I must make it clear that only the authorized government officials may act against violations of the law, including violations of our immigration laws. No other person is allowed, for example, to confront someone in the street, in the pathways of our country, to demand proof of identity. We know that South Africans are not xenophobic, as there is no space for.
The most important thing is to enforce the law. This is not out of hate. This is not out of whatever. The main problem here is security. Security is very important. Children are getting kidnapped. That is why security is important. But now, the problem is the government is not ready to listen, is not listening to the people. They'll always try to find a way of giving answers to the people. But when you listen to what they are saying, you can easily tell that these people don't care. These people don't care about the issues of the people. This is not about hating anyone, but it's about dealing with the real problems. For an example, if you don't want people to take matters into their hands, you have to enforce the law. But the problem, the very same people who are supposed to be enforcing the law, they are not doing their work. It's like they work hand in hand with these corrupt department leaders. Because you can tell that when it comes to all these departments, such as Home Affairs and Labor Department, they are corrupt to the core. In other words, from top to bottom, because you cannot tell me that people on the ground or the laborers on the ground can manipulate the system just like that. So you can tell that the system has been manipulated from the top. So the president should not make things difficult for himself. He has to go straight to the people who are leading these departments, because you can tell that the very same people who are in leadership here, they are corrupt, because there's no way the workers on the ground can manipulate the system just like that. It cannot happen. So you can tell that the corruption is up there. And that is why, at the end of the day, as a result of this frustration, then people end up taking matters into their own hands, because your people, President, are not doing their work, because they've learned from you. They've learned from all these other politicians not to take accountability. They hate accountability. They hate honesty. They hate the truth, just like you, Mr. President, just like all the politicians. So if you want people who are working under your direction, who are working under your leadership, in other words, you have to do self-introspection. When people are complaining, listen attentively, take accountability, correct where you need to correct. So it shouldn't just be a repetition, because all the time when we are listening to the speeches that are delivered by these ministers, including the president, they always talk about corruption. They always talk about corruption, but they are not doing anything about dealing with this corruption, because talking about corruption is one thing, but dealing with it is another thing. So the president has to wake up and deal with this corruption decisively without, like, for an example, fear or favor. But the problem is that they don't like accountability. Our leaders don't like to be held accountable. So that is why even these employees, even those who are taking bribes, even those who are giving bribes, they will also hate accountability.
For xenophobia, for racism, for sexism, for Afrophobia, or any other form of intolerance in South Africa. As communities and as a society, we must not be tempted to join those who want us to turn against people who were not born in South Africa and who are in our midst. We will and must not allow groups to use the legitimate concerns of South Africans to destabilize our country through inciting lawlessness and violence. We will act against forces who are exploiting the concerns of our people about illegal immigration to further their own political, personal, and criminal agendas. We will not be fooled or influenced by social media campaigns that spread misinformation, fake news, and lies about people who are in our country.
Now the president wants to blame social media. When it comes to social media, this is where you hear the real views of the people, what they deal with daily. Because your mainstream media is on top there, is far away from the people. They only want to talk about what you want them to talk about, Mr. President. In other words, mainstream media is there to protect the government, is there to protect, like, this agenda, which is anonymous. Mainstream media doesn't care, is far from the people. So when it comes to social media, you don't have to look fancy to talk about your needs. In other words, you don't need expensive resources to talk about your needs. You don't need, like, for an example, advanced or expensive graphics or cameras. You don't need those things. So people on social media, especially TikTok, you can tell that these people are raising their issues they are facing daily. But here's the thing. The president is trying by all means to divert their attention, to run away from the real issues, because the people who are raising their concerns through social media are genuine, and those things can be investigated whether they are true or false. We have the victims of drugs here in South Africa, and those people can be located. We can see those people. We have people who are not documented. They can be located. We have people who are selling food that has expired, and legally they are not even allowed to run those stores. They can be located. These are the real issues. Our people, whenever they go to Home Affairs, they want to, like, for an example, fix their problems that are related to their ID documents and etc. It takes time. Those issues can be investigated. Those people who are complaining about Home Affairs, Labor Department can be located. Those companies that hire people from outside who are not documented, even those who are documented, but they are not allowed according to the law, those companies can still be located. This is not about hate. This is not about hating anyone. It's about following the constitution. These people, they don't even know what their constitution is actually saying. Why? Because even though they wear suits and ties, they don't care about the constitution. They don't care about the constitution because they still behave like gangsters. They still behave like thieves in our townships. They don't care about the law. They really don't care about the law. So that is why it's easy for them to divert their attention to say, you know what, we have to blame now social media. We have to blame those who are protesting. You can tell we are led by people who don't know where they are going, or maybe they know that they are actually misleading us, or in general, I can say they don't care.
We must be concerned that anti-foreigner sentiment is at times accompanied by tribal and ethnic slurs, insults and attacks aimed at other South Africans.
You can tell these are all lies. Just imagine you are a president, you are called a president. You had time to organize everything that you were going to say. You had time to organize your presentation to the fullest. But you still failed to organize it properly. This is not about tribalism. This is not about hating the foreigners. This is the problem of the security of the country. This is the problem of corruption in private companies, Labor Department, Home Affairs. At the end of the day, these companies, they retrench South Africans so that they can hire non-South Africans. Why? Because non-South Africans are cheap. In other words, they don't have benefits. If they make a mistake, they cannot even go to court. They cannot go anywhere. This is the problem that people are complaining about. It's not tribalism, it's not hate. We are saying, follow the law. Follow the law. So this is not it is not a tribal thing, but is a South African problem that affects the natives of this land. These companies are taking advantage. How many people are getting retrenched illegally every day? If these people go to CCMA, they go to labor court, these companies, they can easily prepare fake documents to prove that they deserve to retrench these people. But after maybe 2 months, 3 months, they will register a new company, or they will transfer the assets of a company to another company. And then they will hire the people they want to hire, not because they love them. They don't love them, but they know that they cannot complain. They cannot go anywhere, because if you are not documented, if you are not legal, where can you run to? In other words, all people, everyone can just take advantage of you. It's not about hating. It's about saying you are, like, for an example, you are disturbing us from fighting our battles, because we cannot fight against these companies if we still have people who will say, I can come and work for you. In other words, we cannot win a war of minimum wage if there are people who can say, if they don't want to work, I can come in and work for you. We cannot win that battle. So our people are complaining about such things. It's not tribal. Everyone is complaining about it everywhere in South Africa. Our government is not serious. We are not led here.
This is not acceptable. We expect foreign nationals who are here to respect our laws. We therefore need to respect them as well.
They don't respect the laws. 99.99%. They don't respect the laws. They even disrespect the natives of the land. You cannot do this in another country, in China, in Russia, in America. You cannot disrespect the natives. You cannot disrespect the citizens of that particular country. You cannot do that. They don't respect. You cannot just say they must respect. You have to take action. In other words, people will respect you because of how you behave, because of your integrity, because of your accountability or you taking accountability. That's when people will respect you. The reason this South Africa is not respected, that is why it's easy for someone in Bangladesh to have a dream of coming here in South Africa. Why? It's because the first thing that comes in their mind is that that's a banana republic. No one will respect you if you don't respect yourself, if you don't respect your people, if you don't love your people, if you don't protect your family. No one will respect you. We have a problem. We have a problem. As long as we have such leaders, then it means we have to come up with other alternatives, because we can tell that these people are not ready to listen. That is why I don't like politics. That is why I always say politics is a scam. These people are not ready to listen. That is why, if you still believe in these politics, at least we have to find a political party. We have to sit down with the leaders of this political party who can understand what we are saying. In other words, the leaders of March and March, they should, like, for an example, find a political party or maybe two political parties that will understand what people are complaining about. In other words, who will agree with these issues, so that at least we can vote for that political party, because all these other political parties is just a scam. In other words, this will only be a reason for me to say, let me just go and vote. That's the only reason that can make me to stand up and say, now let me go and vote. Only if, because the moment MK Party lost KwaZulu-Natal, I gave up. I gave up because, to be honest, that was my only hope to say, probably we are going to start to see the progress. But now the problem is that these people is like, they are good when it comes to rigging, or our people can't vote accordingly. We don't know. But at the end of the day, I cannot blame the people. But the only thing that will make me to say, let me just vote, in the future. It's only when the leaders of March and March and these other organizations that are associated with March and March can come forward and say, let's find another organization and convince all of us that they will do the right thing, change the constitution. That's when that's when I can personally cast my vote, because these people are not ready to listen. In other words, they are like, let me not even go there, but these people are not ready to listen. They just want to tell us what they want us to hear.
But they must respect the laws of our country. Almost all South Africans recognize that illegal immigration is a significant challenge. Illegal migration, if unchecked, poses a risk to South Africa's security, stability, as well as our economic progress. We know that illegal migration...
That's true. That's true. The major problem is the security. The first problem is the security. Before we can talk about unemployment, the first problem is the security. So that is why the law has to be followed accordingly. In other words, security and safety is something which is very important, because at the end of the day, you cannot just come here and like sell food for people just like that. In other words, even when it comes to selling food, it should not be an easy thing that you can just do it just like that. In other words, you have to follow certain laws in order for you or before you can sell food, because people can be easily eliminated through food. So security is very important. So you cannot just allow anyone to, like, for an example, sell food and manufacture their own stuff that is not even regulated. So when we deal with inspection, it's not just, we don't want to like expect people to like be checked whether they are documented or not. But even if they are legal, even those who met that criteria of 5 million investment and etc., and they are manufacturing food, their factories should be investigated. Their factories should be investigated. But we can tell that these people are not ready to listen.
Migration affects service delivery and places additional burdens on essential services such as healthcare and education. Illegal migration routes increasingly overlap with organized crime. Criminal syndicates involved in trafficking, extortion, illegal mining, drugs, and money laundering often use undocumented migration for recruitment and concealment of goods.
The president is aware of what is happening. Now, if you are aware, in other words, you took your time, maybe 2% of your time, to listen to the concerns of the people. What you need to do right now, don't blame social media. Don't blame the people. Don't blame the protesters. Don't blame those who are raising their issues through social media, because social media is helping them to be heard. The only thing that you should do right now is to do the right thing. Get rid of corruption. Implement new systems that will protect your people. So that those who come in, they go through the procedure.
We know that illegal immigration undermines our efforts to create decent work for our people. There are businesses in our country that employ undocumented immigrants because their legal status means that they cannot stand up for their own rights. Some employers hire undocumented immigrants because they pay them wages that are well below our minimum wage and make them work longer hours without due compensation.
That's true, Mr. President. It's not just small businesses, it's big companies. It's big companies who are doing this thing. And they've hired thousands and thousands and thousands, if not millions. They've hired those people in these companies. As a result, it affects our employment rate. It affects our employment rate. It's not just small businesses, but it's bigger companies. Now, the new problem that we have is that your tenderpreneurs have adopted the very same style as well. The tenderpreneurs in construction companies and in various projects, they hire undocumented. They hire undocumented people because they know that you cannot go anywhere. If you go to police station, you will be arrested. It's not because they love them, but it is because they love slavery. But they cannot implement the slavery system on the South Africans. They cannot do that. So that is why they are using these people who are not documented.
They are undocumented workers and exploit their vulnerability are breaking the law. They undermine our labor laws and standards. They undermine fair competition. And they undermine opportunities for South Africans. Such conduct will attract far stronger penalties and far stricter enforcement. Many communities have expressed anger about the number of foreign nationals running spaza shops, trading stores, and other informal outlets. They argue that foreign enterprises are squeezing South Africans from operating in these markets in their own communities. These concerns cannot and must not be dismissed. Many South Africans feel excluded from opportunities within their own communities. Government has a responsibility to...
That's true, Mr. President. I just want to accept or to acknowledge that some of the things that he said are valid and correct. You can tell that he took time to listen to the people. And the other thing is that we don't feel excluded. We are excluded. And you know that we are excluded. As we are excluded from the major corporate world, we are now also excluded to the small business sector. And that's not a good thing. Because if I cannot be hired by a certain company, by a famous company, or even if it's not a famous company, then I can start my own thing. And I cannot be competing with refugees from other countries. It shouldn't be like that. It should not be like that. So the laws should be like followed. The most important thing is the implementation. Yes, they can talk. So when it comes to talking, I know they are very good. In other words, we can give them 90%. We can give them 90%. But when it comes to implementation, you only give them 1%. That's the problem. This is the reason why people are frustrated. The problem here in South Africa is nepotism. That is why all these departments have fallen. Because someone who doesn't have a skill will hire people who are like him, who don't have a skill. Someone who is corrupt will do the same thing. Someone who is greedy will also do the same thing. So that is why we are led by people who are unskilled. We are led by people who are corrupt, who are greedy. We are led by people who don't care. If South Africans can be given a chance to fix the country by working in these departments, by hiring right South Africans in these departments, the president would not complain all the time by corruption. But I still blame the president as well, because they don't like the truth. They don't like accountability. They want to shift blames.
Support local enterprise, to promote fair competition, and to create conditions in which South Africans can participate meaningfully in the economy of our country. As a country, as communities, and as a continent, we need to work together in accordance with our Constitution, our laws, and our international obligations to tackle illegal immigration. And we must do so without resorting to violence, intimidation, or victimization. Following the announcements that I made during the State of the Nation address in February, government is taking further decisive action to tackle illegal immigration. Last week, Cabinet adopted a comprehensive approach to migration management. This approach has been endorsed by the President's Coordinating Council, which includes our premiers and our MECs and representatives from local government and the mayors of our metropolitan cities, as well as representatives of the National House of Traditional and Khoisan leaders. This evening, I would like to share with you the key actions we are taking. As government, our objective is very clear. We want a South Africa where every person who enters the borders of our country does so lawfully. We want a South Africa where immigration laws are respected and enforced. A South Africa where businesses compete fairly. A South Africa where communities feel safe and secure. And a South Africa that remains true to its constitutional values and its commitment to human dignity. We intend to achieve this objective by implementing the following measures, amongst others. Firstly, we are and will continue to crack down on the violation of our immigration, labor, and other laws. Secondly, we will continue to prevent people from entering the country irregularly and illegally. Thirdly, we are and will continue to stamp out corruption in our immigration system. Fourthly, we will strengthen our immigration laws and policies. And finally, we will continue to engage other countries, including our sister countries on the African continent, to forge a broader response to migration challenges across our region and the continent. The first part of our response is a concerted crackdown on violations of existing immigration, labor, and other laws. The Department of Home Affairs, the Border Management Authority, the South African Police Service, and other law enforcement agencies have been and will intensify the process of identifying and deporting undocumented foreign nationals residing illegally in South Africa. In the past year alone, the Border Management Authority managed to intercept and stop over 450,000 people who were attempting to enter South Africa illegally. We will set up dedicated.
The most important thing is the implementation. When it comes to talking, as I've said, that we can give them 99.999% when it comes to talking, because they can talk. But the problem is the implementation. When it comes to implementation, is zero. To give them maybe a benefit of a doubt, we can give them 1% when it comes to implementation. Because when it comes to hiring these people, these inspectors who are going to inspect all these departments, who are going to do this and that, we need to change leadership in those departments. Because people who are corrupt in most cases are those people at the top. If you need something to be implemented, you have to deal with those who are in leadership. Get rid of those who are in leadership. Then it's going to be easy for you to implement as a president. In other words, if the president is honest, if the president is really honest, in other words, he has to hire new people when it comes to leadership in all these departments. We can talk about labor, home affairs. We can talk about all these other departments. We need new staff, people who are interested when it comes to implementing the laws. But as for me, I can say every time when the elections are close, they always talk like this. They always talk like this. Because they know that our people will always calm down. Then after the elections, there'll be no implementation. They won't implement all these things before the elections. They will promise you that they will implement them probably after the elections. I know that it doesn't mean everybody should agree with me, but my position is clear. I don't want to be neutral. I don't want to like be somebody else. I want to be myself. In other words, I have to be truthful to myself, because I believe where I'm staying in various areas, we have a problem. We have a problem of people who are proudly undocumented. Their arrogance is on another level. It's not about hate. It's not about anything. But the most important thing is the security. When kids are getting eliminated because they've eaten poisonous food, it's too bad. When children are getting trafficked, it's too bad. Then you cannot say, because we say it here on social media, it's a lie. It's not a lie. Those statistics can be proven. Affected families can be located. Mr. President, I really don't know what to say. But as I come to the end of this video, I just want to say it doesn't mean we have to agree all the time. But when it comes to this, I will tell you one thing. If you still believe in politics, you need something special this time. You need something special. Ordinary politics won't work for us.
If everything can be paused, I will ask the spiritual court to put death on hold so we can have time to breathe, and the rain of tears shall stop.
I have an appeal to the Supreme Court of Justice and Truth. Your mediation is necessary. Pause everything for a moment.